Welcome to the Equipped Disciple channel. My name is Rick McClatchy. I will be your host. We are here to be and to make disciples of Jesus, and we do that through daily devos, through Sunday sermons, and through other discipleship resources. We are here to equip you to be an equipped disciple. All right. Welcome into another day of your daily devos. I'm Pastor Rick, and we are jumping into Genesis chapter 3. You're like, Rick, why are you always jumping? Why can't we just make a step down into the pool? Why can't we go like more step by step, more relaxed, more easygoing? No, it's always jumping in. Yeah, that's what we do. We jump in. All right. So we are jumping in to Genesis chapter 3, the first temptation. So it's big stuff going on today. In the book of Genesis, we're going to jump right on in to verse 1. Now the serpent was the most cunning of all the wild animals that the Lord had made. He said to the woman, "Did God really say you can't eat from any tree in the garden?" And the woman said to the serpent, "We may eat the fruit of the trees in the garden, but about the fruit of the tree in the middle of the garden, God said you must not eat it or touch it, or you will die." I mean, just a couple of precursory questions, comments. Like, why are you talking to the serpent? Just because the serpent asks you a question does not mean you are required to answer. Some of you need to write that down, because I think it's something that we need to realize, recognize, and then act accordingly, because sometimes we play far too long according to the enemy's rules. It's kind of like David and Goliath, right? Because all the Israelites are sitting there, shaking in their boots, because Goliath gets up there and says, "Hey, y'all, I want you to send out one person to fight me, and if you win, then we'll be your servants." Well, who says you have to follow those rules? Who says now that he has made that challenge, that he's now dictated how the entire battle should be fought? We don't need to play according to the enemy's game. Like, it's not his game. We don't have to play by his rules. And so when he says, "Did God really say you can't eat from any tree in the garden?" Yep, I trust my God. He actually didn't say that we couldn't eat from any. He said we could eat from all of them, except just that one. I mean, if you were to phrase it that way, you'd stop the little mind bend shift here that he's trying to accomplish by making it sound like God's trying to hold back on her and not give her the best. So he says, "Did God really say?" On one hand, could be challenging her recollection. Maybe he genuinely doesn't know what God said, or maybe he's just wondering if she remembers. So he's potentially challenging her recollection for the purpose of deception, right? So I want to see what you remember that he said and how confident you are in what he said, so that I know where I can do my best twisting and probably get it by you without you catching it. So challenging your recollection here is one of the steps moving towards deception. I want to trick you into thinking that you know something or don't know something that you need to know or should know or actually do know. So, and then challenging his character, God's character, is in hopes of breeding rebellion. So you can see how challenging you the way you remember it is a way to lead into deceiving you. Challenging God's character in regards to your heart leads to the pathway of rebellion. So those are the kind of the twofold tactic that the enemy could have been trying to take towards Eve in this particular scenario by asking, "Did God really say?" Eve's recollection of what God says is inaccurate. And you kind of ask yourself, like, why? Why is it inaccurate? What happened? Like, were you not around? Were you not paying attention? You were distracted by your phone? I mean, what exactly happened, because we all know women's recollection is like off the charts, right? Like you never say something you don't want remembered forever, okay? And because they'll remember and bring it up in the argument, you know? I mean, I'm telling you, it happens. So the fact that Eve's recollection of what God says is inaccurate is very interesting. Or by chance, was all of the instruction given to Adam and Adam relayed it poorly? Or an interesting one to think about, because she says we can't eat it or even touch it. There's this possibility that Adam actually delivered it to her exactly that way, that she actually 100% believed that that is what God said. And if that's the case, it's an interesting one, and it makes a lot of human nature kind of sense to it, is that man is always trying to have control of the situation. And so sometimes we make rules that God never made, and we make things more complicated than they're actually supposed to be. And so Adam, maybe so for whatever reason, feels like maybe she's going to struggle to keep the rules. And so he's like, you know what, babe, don't even, like, yeah, we're not supposed to eat it, but God also said, don't touch it. Okay. And he just makes it up. So to try to pull her further away from the danger zone. And so it's well intentioned, but a lot of times it backfires, because now it seems like God's being like, he doesn't trust her. And, there's like more grounds here for some of these deception things to begin to take hold. Verse 4, the serpent says, no, you will certainly not die, the serpent said to the woman. In fact, God knows that when you eat it, your eyes will be opened and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. So he lays out some stuff. He lays out some stuff that's actually true, but he laces it with these deceptive lies wrapped around it, which is actually, which is the poison of it all, which is what makes it so dangerous, is because it can sound so close to what God actually said and yet be so far away from it that their eyes will indeed be opened and they will be like God, knowing good and evil. That's true to a degree, but the real point of it is you'll be there prematurely and without God's blessing, and that makes for a pretty challenging scenario. Again, this whole drive from the enemy was getting her to question the heart of God. And the craziest thing about it is that he's getting her to question the heart of God while sitting smack dab in the middle of a giant garden where God planted the trees himself, and they're perfect. So they don't have any thorns and they don't have any weeds and like nothing crazy. Like, and even the spiders don't care about you. Like, they don't come after you. They don't bite you. None of them are poison. No, I don't know. I just feel like snakes and spiders being all poisonous and stuff had to have happened as a result of the fall. So, I digress, right? But so questioning the heart of God while standing in the very midst of all of his provision. And it's a really powerful picture just to sit and think about it for a minute. Think about your life and think about the provision of God. Think about the blessings that God has placed in your life. And then ask yourself, how in the world could I ever question the amazing heart of God while I'm sitting where I'm sitting, while I'm experiencing what I'm experiencing? So, just sit with that one for a little bit today. But Eve, the woman, saw the tree was good for food and delightful to look at, and it was desirable for obtaining wisdom. So she took some of its fruit and ate it, and she also gave it to her husband who was with her, and he ate it. I should have made a slide on this part, but I missed it somehow. We'll come back to it here in a second. But I wanted to point your attention on this particular verse. She saw that she saw that the tree was good for food and delightful to look at and was desirable for obtaining wisdom. it just reminded me of this section of scripture from 1 John 2, verses 15 through 17. It says, "Do not love the world or the things in the world." Excuse me. "If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. Everything in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride in one's possessions, is not from the Father, but is from the world." And I feel like verse 16 is what Eve was kind of dabbling in there as she was evaluating the fruit. Like, it was good to the eyes, the lust of the eyes, the pride in one's possessions, the lust of the flesh because it was good for food. I don't know. There's just a lot of stuff in there that is like a pretty easy parallel to what was going on with Eve and what's in 1 John. And the world with its lust is passing away, but the one who does the will of God remains forever. So again, just remembering that these things are temporal and they go away, and that should help us say no to the things that we need to say no to. But now I also wanted to just jump on one point that I did not make a slide for, so we're just going to have to deal with it. But she also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it too. And so a lot of times people like to give Eve a lot of garbage about her bad decision and how it ruined humanity and all this stuff. But I'm like, Adam was right there. I mean, literally right there. And he didn't say anything. He didn't do anything. And then he cooperated. So goodness gracious, Adam, pull yourself together, man. So you cannot sit there and point your wagging finger, at women and say, if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be in this hot mess. Because he was with her and he ate it. So goodness gracious, come on. All right. No one had even seen them yet. All right, let's see. I missed verse 7. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they knew they were naked, so they sewed fig leaves together and made coverings for themselves. So no one had even seen them yet. Their sin was only between the two of them. Like they had eaten the fruit together, and yet they still felt the need to be covered. So that's how strong the shame was in their lives. And they attempted to make their own covering because they didn't want to tell God. They didn't want to tell him because, who wants to tell the God of the universe that you just disobeyed? And so they were like, you know what? We can't let him see us like this. This is embarrassing. So they go and they make their own coverings out of fig leaves. And man, that had to be kind of painful. I mean, those leaves aren't the softest leaves ever, and you got them all rubbing all over your skin. And, like that just does not sound like a good plan. But they attempted to make their own salvation, their own covering, their own atonement, if you will. And isn't that just the indicator of what humans are like? Always trying to create their own covering, to cover for their own sin, their own atonement. And again, just going back to this word shame, we talked about a little bit yesterday, a painful feeling of humiliation or distress caused by the consciousness of wrong or foolish behavior. And that is what they began to experience, that painful feeling of humiliation or distress caused by the consciousness of wrong or foolish behavior. So when you're just aware that all that stuff you just did was cray-cray, and what were you thinking, you end up experiencing a boatload of shame. But Jesus is the answer, y'all. That's the thing. And we're going to see a little bit as we go through this chapter how God begins to even foreshadow what Jesus is going to accomplish for his people. But in the meantime, just remember all of these things that we talked about. I'm sure that you have them all memorized, right? So just recognizing the voice of God and what he has said, and don't allow yourself to get pulled into deception, by having them challenge your recollection. Don't have them pull you into rebellion by challenging your understanding of God's character. And just as a curious point of why Eve quoted the Lord wrong, make sure that you can quote the Lord right, with what God has put into your heart, what he's told you. Then the serpent just trying to trick him about the death that was coming. And did that actually happen? I thought I had a slide in here that said that. Maybe I deleted it. That's so funny. Because he's like, no, you won't certainly die, but was that actually the thing that was going to happen? We'll dig into that after we see. I mean, obviously here they ate the fruit, but they didn't die immediately, right? They sewed fig leaves together and made coverings for themselves. So what in the world? I thought it said in the day that you eat it, you will die. Well, my contention to you is that something has died. Certainly their innocence has died. And we'll kind of explore as we continue on through the chapter to see, did anything else die with the eating of that fruit? And then, of course, their physical bodies are going to die as well. So that process gets put into place immediately, even though it wasn't part of the original plan, in the sense of like, God doesn't create death, right? He doesn't create these things. It is a natural outflow of our decisions, of our fracturing the universe with our rebellion against God's throne. So with that, God bless you. Hope you have a great day, and I will see you tomorrow.